Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Advertising has changed a lot since 1973, the year David Duffy and Joe Shanley founded their Providence PR firm. Over 4 decades, Duffy and Shanley has done campaigns for the Providence Journal, Sporto, Swarovski, and a host of other clients. There were only 3 TV networks when Duffy and Shanley was founded. Now it's an integrated marketing firm that does digital designs. This week on Executive Suite, 2 generations of Duffy and Shanley with company president Jon Duffy and Duffy and Shanley founder and former chairman David Duffy. Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Dave, Jon, thanks for being here.
Thanks. Ted.
And
Great.
Jon, I can congratulate you today. You're the first person ever to appear 3 times on Executive Suite.
I want co-host status.
Yeah, when I get it on Newsmakers, you'll get it here. And but that's good too, because it's gonna be a while before I have anything to ask you, because I want to start with your father's long and illustrious career. Dave, I was reading some of the stories in the Journal over the years about how you came to found. I said at the top, it was founded as Duffy and Shanley. I now am corrected. It was D.A. Duffy and Company, and Joe Shanley joined you 2 years later. But even before that, I want to talk about, you started out, you worked for the Projo, GE, PC, and then your career really took off with Fitzgerald Tool. Talk about some of the people you got to meet in that job. This was in the 1960s, I believe.
Fitzgerald Tool was quite political, as a matter of fact. And Lou Fitzgerald, God rest his soul, was probably the preeminent PR guy in Rhode Island at that time. And he represented John Chafee. And I was there as a young kid coming from PC, and I was assigned to a guy named Herb DeSimone, who ran for Attorney General and really took on the Democratic machine at that time. Joseph Nugent was a longtime Attorney General and beat him. And John Chafee, we kept doing things with the governor's office, and he gave me probably my biggest break of my life.
John Chafee?
Yeah, he was chairman of the Republican Governors Association. And Nelson Rockefeller decided, you can't even imagine this today.
Now for my younger viewers, Nelson Rockefeller was the governor of New York. The Rockefeller Republicans are named for him and often mentioned as a presidential candidate.
Thank you for that. Anyway, he decided in the spring that he would run for president. The election was in November. Can you imagine that? And to do that, they set up something called a Republican Governors Platform Hearings. There were enough for Republican governors around the country to have these in key markets. And he said to Chafee, I got my team, we'll pay for it, we're ready to go, except that I don't feel comfortable sending my folks into California. Reagan just got elected. He said, you have somebody that can come out and advance it. And he gave him my name. So I went out there, I met Reagan and Mrs. Reagan. They gave me a wonderful tour of the Sacramento State House. We had a great rally. And if you want a war story, I had to get 4 governors to Arizona quickly, but I had a Nelson Rockefeller credit card. I went to the airport, we got a 707 for about 4 guys and staff. And they thought, oh, this kid has got something.
He was really a Rockefeller.
So they asked me to stay on and do another event, and it was with Volpe, a governor of Massachusetts, and did that. And after that session, he comes, hiya, Duffy, hiya. He talked like that. We're going to the White House and we want you with us. So I went and I became an advanced team leader and stayed on and off doing projects for him until he died in about 1979.
Wow. Now, you ended up, you went to Washington for a time with Herb DeSimone, worked there, and then came back for another campaign, and that sort of will lead us into the story of the founding of the company. So what brought you back to Rhode Island there around, I think we're in 72, 73 now?
Right. Herb was the Assistant Secretary of Transportation. I was a special assistant.
This is in the Nixon administration.
Right. Herb had lost the governorship to Frank Leach in an 18-day long count in 69, and the White House thought, it was Nixon's White House, that he would be a great candidate. He should run again. Governor Leach promised no income tax. Guess what? He got in. There was an income tax. He had to step down. Phil Knoll, a very popular Mayor Warwick, came on. That was our opponent, and we lost. Duffy was with 3 kids and a house in Lincoln, was all of a sudden on the unemployment line. And try that, going as a guy who just lost a Republican election, going to the employment office for all Democrat guy. You're dead, kid. I remember the guy saying that to me. You're dead. Well, I almost was. So unemployment line, I looked around a little bit, and I'm not going to tell you we had great business plans and all of that. Had to eat, man. Had to eat. That's a real driving force.
Had to provide for John.
That's right. He was a young man, very young man.
Jennifer.
And Jennifer and Jeremy.
And Jeremy, right?
And so I decided to roll the dice. I saw a little gap in town. There was.
What did you see at the time? I'm sort of curious. You know, it's so different. I mean, people have seen Mad Men, but the idea of what this world of marketing was like. We had, you and I were talking, John, before the show, 30 or more decent-sized agencies
in Rhode Island. It was incredible. And some of the biggest in New England were here. Bo Bernstein was the biggest. Horton Church and Goff was probably the best business-to-business agency in New England. Kramer Trowbridge Case, huge consumer agency with a good PR side, and many Potter Hazel. You never heard of them. Potter Hazelworth, Fitzgerald Toole, Darrell Prutzman. It goes on and on and on.
So how did you see an opening then?
I didn't think there was enough PR being done in town. It wasn't as accepted either as it is today. I saw a gap there, and besides, that's all I knew. Right? So,
necessity, the mother's milk.
Exactly. So we decided to open what may have been the first public relations firm in Rhode Island. There's another fellow, I'm sure he's still alive, is Will Barbo, who did kind of some business-to-business stuff out of Barrington, but that's the only one I saw. So there we go.
So, John, you have a sense of what the business was like when your father started and when he was through the 70s and into the 80s, and what it is now under your leadership as an integrated marketing firm. Could you contrast that for people? How different, if you walked into Duffy and Shanley in the 70s versus now, what is different and what is the same?
The differences are much greater than the sameness. The media group, you mentioned it in your opening, had it pretty easy. You bought the Providence Journal, NBC, of course, WPRI.
Of course.
And Channel 6, you covered all of Rhode Island. Today, there's it's unlimited how many, if you add up all the bloggers as potential advertising outlets, you know, there's thousands for you to decide where to invest your clients' money. So that's a big difference. But I think the biggest difference when Dave started, Duffy and Shanley was Rhode Island centric. There was no need to go anywhere else. You know, corporate headquarters were here. There were probably 30 agencies in the market because there were 20 banks, and that was the rule. If you had a bank, you had
to have a bank.
You were all
had
set.
to have a bank.
You know, everybody had a bank. Everybody had a hospital. You know, that's why there were so many. And as consolidations happened and decision makings left Rhode Island, the opportunities in Rhode Island have diminished on the advertising PR side. So probably the biggest difference when I came back to the agency in 1999 from Los Angeles, you probably had 85% of the business was Rhode Island based. I had been away for 10 years, so my network was somewhere else. And today it's probably 85% of our business is out of Rhode Island.
So it's been a big shift.
It's been a huge shift and a fortunate shift because we couldn't eat on just Rhode Island. So we've had to make that transition. So that's probably the greatest difference is the media opportunities, but also where our clients are.
All right, we have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to hear more war stories from Dave Duffy's career and more about the 40th anniversary of Duffy and Shanley. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and joining me are two generations of the esteemed Rhode Island PR firm Duffy and Shanley. We have David Duffy, the founder and former chairman of the company, and his son Jon Duffy, who is now the president of Duffy and Shanley. And we were talking before the break about contrasting the advertising marketing world you got into in the 70s when you founded the firm and what you see now, John. And just to follow up on that, you now call Duffy and Shanley an integrated marketing firm. Now, my reporter twitches a little. It sounds kind of like synergy and corporate type of lingo, but why the name? Why the name change from calling it just an advertising firm?
Well, when Dave started, it was PR. They added advertising when they won some accounts like EDC and the Providence Journal in the 80s, added direct marketing along the way. So it's really what was going on is integration of all marketing disciplines. So it's actually true. You know, that's you don't need to twitch, but that's what it is marketing's become integrated instead of siloed. And that's how it was for many years.
Do you think that makes sense, Dave?
Absolutely.
You think the way it's gone? Sometimes you talk to someone who saw the old way and says, I don't know.
Well, we didn't have fax machines. We had electric typewriters, you know? Things were much slower. You had more time to think, actually, particularly in, say, PR crisis management situations and so forth. But totally different. If I got hired today, I'd be running the elevator, parking cars, whatever, you know. It's
You say
really
it was
a different
slower,
world.
but I know at the beginning of the firm, you guys worked every Saturday morning, full
We did.
staff,
We
every
did.
Saturday morning.
Every week?
Yeah,
Every week, but there was a reward. We could all, at noontime, we'd shut it down. Everyone went to the former Players Corner pub. Veal Parmesan and all the beer you wanted for the rest of the day. We had a lot more fun in those days, by the way.
Now, speaking of fun, you mentioned crisis management. I know there's a story about when you had a crisis management for yoga, and you don't expect a crisis in the world of yoga. But tell us about that. What happened? What was the client then?
I don't know if you want to hear that.
It's all right.
This is family television?
No. It's very low ratings to begin with. So.
I won't name it. It was an international yoga center and international program. They printed books and sold their lessons, plans, and all that stuff. And they had a yogi from India who was very strict. He had a huge world headquarters in New England, and he had dormitories for his female followers and disciples and for his male followers separate, even though some were married.
Oh.
However, he was caught in the girls' dorm, so to speak, with this line that having relations with him would make them more spiritual through sexual energy.
I've used that line myself.
Yeah, I thought you did. I mean, you sure? So we got called in because we had some previous religious crisis management experience. And I went in and they met, the board were all disciples.
Oh.
And they told me, you come in and you're going to sit cross-legged and look someone in the eye when you speak and breathe. Okay, so I'm there for a couple of hours, and finally there's this one guy like you two looking at each other, and they're both rocking, and one is protecting the yogi, the other is, and the guy finally explodes and he says, "But he is my wife." Ooh. And the other guy, the whole room's up.
Start breathing very deeply, yeah.
And I said, "That's it, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Now I could speak." And I said, "You're looking like a cult." And
Because you can finally speak honestly.
yeah, and we quickly did a program, and within 24 hours it was all straightened out. He was going to go back to, we had to have plan a big apology ceremony, very spiritual, and wired everyone around the world that this guy is being replaced and stuff.
That's the beauty of the business. You never know what when the phone rings,
what it's
going to be.
It was a very interesting thing, and they're still very strong today and alive and well, and I'm happy for them.
Happy
really.
you could help them out.
Yeah.
I want to talk about family a bit. Obviously, we're talking about your family's business. Your father, Joe Duffy, came to the U.S. from Ireland, right, Dave?
No, his father did.
His father did,
but
excuse me.
He was orphaned very early. He was still a young, less than a teenager, actually.
So he was young when he got brought over.
Yeah.
And he ran, people might remember Duffy's Tavern in
Absolutely.
Pawtucket.
Broadway
that's
and
you guys.
Benefit. Yep. Duffy's Tavern. What was his line? If you come,
drinking to forget, please pay in advance.
that was it.
It's a very good. They should bring that back. And John, you didn't always work for your dad. People might think you started, 22 drawing stuff or whatever, but no, you went off to LA for a while. What brought you back?
My mom had passed away, and Dave was looking for something else. He had worked as hard as anybody I ever knew. His work ethic was unbelievable, and he just had enough. And so the opportunity was to come back and get involved with running the firm, which was very appealing.
Now, we were talking off air about transitions for family-owned businesses, which can be one of the toughest things any family-owned business goes through, especially if they're transferring in the family. Did you start conversations, or how did it sort of begin?
Actually, after he left Georgetown and his fiancée went to law school in Boston, he worked with us. And everyone liked John, and he was a business major, studied at Oxford too, by the way.
Proud
Bring
father.
him on more often.
Business major, and he knew the game, okay? And so when he left, that was fine. He was the obvious one to bring back. My youngest son, Jeremy, was still in school, and Jennifer, as you know, is going on. I'm very proud of my family. They're all, except the women are even better. Talk about Duffy's only gift, we marry up very well. So it was a natural to have Jon come back. I was thrilled that he and Julie were willing to move from Los Angeles and come back here, and Julie's now doing very well with Textron, and it was fine. We didn't have to talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very Irish of you.
Thank you.
Did it
Whatever
feel
that
smooth on
means.
your end?
It did, but my favorite transition story, and it's probably not his. The first year that I was president, and Dave had left, we were on our payment schedule of making sure he earned everything he did for building such a great firm. And
I
the
left
first
too
year
much
was
on the table, let me tell you.
the first year was the dot-com bubble. We had more business than we knew what to do with. It was coming in from everywhere, New York, San Francisco, and I thought I was pretty smart. Bubble bursts, revenues tank, and I go to see my mentor, my father, for advice.
And your chairman.
For advice. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, I'm sure you've been through this. How'd you handle it? And he goes, whoa. My payments are safe, right? And that's when I knew.
You're in charge now.
Well, and that family goes so far, and then the business gets involved.
That's right. All right, we have to tell you, we're overdue for another break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about how advertising has changed and maybe what advice Dave has for running a winning campaign in Rhode Island. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and I want to show just two great ads that Duffy and Shanley did during your heyday, Dave. First, here's Providence Journal Billboard. I think it was a seasonal one, and this was a big getting the Providence Journal, right?
Absolutely. It changed us.
How so?
Well, we were still primarily a public relations and collateral materials firm, a few small ad accounts, and the Journal was put out to bid, and no one gave us much of a chance, but we went all out. In fact, we didn't follow the rules even, and we did. We had heard that when Socket newspaper was going to go to a Sunday edition, and we did a whole effort on how not to stop it, but to devour it almost, and they loved it, and we got it. So that was terrific for us. Same year, we got the Department of Economic Development.
And let me pause you there just because I think we have one of your ads for tourism here. It's about the rich goofing off. Yeah, and this is what you're talking about, right? When you get this account.
It was a major tourism account in those days. They don't today, unfortunately. They don't have much of a budget, but then they did. And tourism really grew. We had that for almost 20 years, John. I think very proud of the work for that. But both these clients felt that it was inappropriate for us to continue to do political campaigns.
And just to back up, through the 70s into the 80s, you've done Claiborne Pell's ads, Olympia Snow, the Maine senator, John Chafee. You did a lot of that.
Our very first client of the four was the late Jim Taft, who was mayor of Cranston, who ran for governor against Joe Garrahy. We lost that one. But we had the best political ad in America.
Did you? Did you win that?
Yes. It's called a Clio. Guess who came in second? Jimmy Carter's ads.
Really?
Yeah. So we're very proud of that. It was called a...
Doesn't that just show a great ad doesn't always win the campaign?
We don't talk about that.
Okay. Now, another interesting account, you had Citizens Bank for a long time, and you mentioned before how when there were a lot more banks, there was a lot more work for, and I'm sure this is true in markets all over the place. Here's actually an ad for Citizens from when you had Citizens. And this was when Citizens was bought by Royal Bank of Scotland. It grew and grew and grew. And at one point you fought to keep the account, but at some point you decided it was too big. What was your thinking there, Dave?
I didn't think it was right for us with the kind of staff we had and how labor intensive it would be as they spread out into the Midwest and stuff. And I felt also sooner or later they would come to us and say, because they're being pushed by the big boys in Boston and New York, that it was smart for us to get out but keep the public relations side, which happened. So, but really, if I can go back, before we had Citizens, we had Old Stone Bank. And do you remember Old Stone Bank?
No, I don't personally, but I know the name.
Okay, well, it started when I was with Fitzgerald Tool, and they were going nowhere as a bank. They were probably, as John said, 10 pretty solid banks in the state, commercial banks. And we did research and showed that they were a blue-collar bank. And so I went and I thought I was going to get thrown out, but I said, we can change everything. Fred Flintstone. And they bought it. We got Hanna-Barbera in California to do 3 spots, and Yabba Dabba Doo loved that bank, and Ready Freddy ATMs. They went
Really?
in retail. They became #1 in retail. Really, it was great.
So, John, we're getting toward the end of the show here. I think what keeps you up at night, or what do you spend a lot of time thinking about how the business is changing and how advertising firms need to stay ahead of it and be ready, to market next year and the year after and in a decade?
Well, technology has changed the entire industry, and that's changed how ads are delivered to people. The other thing now is technology is so good, you measure every ad, so you're optimizing campaigns on a daily basis. Back in his day, they do an ad, they put it out there, and they do another one next year. We're changing ads daily. Something's working. What is somebody clicking on? Oh, they like this better. So
there must be more pressure on the creative staff too to have more ideas if you need that many ads.
There's just pressure everywhere, and there's more people out there chasing more crumbs. So if you're not going to work harder than the next guy, you're not going to keep a piece of business.
Do you think is it a challenge for Duffy and Shanley to be in Providence when so few major corporations are based here at this point?
Well, I think it's you have to go get your business, and that's why I said 85% of our business is out of state. But technology has also been the great equalizer, because I can compete for business anywhere in the country. I cost less than New York, or Los Angeles or Chicago. So if I have expertise in the category, I have a shot now to get a piece of business that typically, in the past, they wouldn't have been able to do so.
In my day, he has AT&T for New England, Staples for major
country,
work.
yeah.
In my time, I don't think we could have even competed for clients like that.
Why?
Too big in some cases. They're in bigger markets. The huge agencies would hover over them and so forth. But as he said, technology is a great equalizer, and it allowed finally to get in the door, but for equally important for them to meet our people who are smart. We're lucky to have smart people here. We really are.
I think you would have kicked Don Draper's butt.
Well, he was drunk half the time anyway.
I'd quit it
Did
too,
people
Anthony.
drink that much in advertising then?
Yes.
Absolutely, it was absolutely true.
When I started, I came right from the Army into General Electric, okay, and
Yep.
connect the advertising, sales, promotion department.
Oh, I got to cut you off there. I'm sorry. We'll tell the story. We'll have you back, though. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Executive Suite with Duffy and Shanley. I'll find out that story and post it online.
Okay,
See you
thank
next week.
Well, these guys.